Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon. Yellowstone Season 5 could make Rainwater's threat to John Dutton come true. Kevin Costner's John Dutton and Gil Birmingham's Thomas Rainwater's relationship started with a contentious dynamic in Yellowstone, with the new tribal chief making a chilling threat to the owner of the largest ranch in the country. Since the beginning of Taylor Sheridan's neo-Western drama, Thomas has vied for the Yellowstone Dutton Ranch, which once belonged to the indigenous people of Montana. Thomas lays out his plan for the endeavor in 2018, so you may have forgotten his promise in Yellowstone Season 1, but Rainwater's words to John Dutton are impending heading into the Yellowstone Season 5 finale. A conflict on the border of the Yellowstone Ranch and the Broken Rock Reservation kicks off the series. After cattle end up on the tribe's land, John Dutton comes with a convoy to take them back. Since then, Thomas has built a relationship with Yellowstone character Case Dutton, Luke Grimes, due to his proximity to the ranch and the reservation. Meanwhile, Thomas' relationship with John improved, with both leaders finding themselves on the same side of various conflicts as both try to protect and preserve Montana. Still, Thomas seeks the Yellowstone, and his threat could come true. While the mission to take their cattle back ends unsuccessfully with Lee Dutton's death in the Yellowstone premiere, John Dutton gets Thomas Rainwater arrested to coerce him into returning his beef. While Sheridan positions Thomas as a villain at this point, it's unsettling to see Rainwater in orange prison garb when Costner's character visits the tribal chief. As the men confront one another, Thomas reveals he isn't the underdog. He tells John about his background in mergers and acquisitions with Merrill Lynch, explaining his plan to take the ranch back. During their conversation, Thomas makes a threat that feels like a prophecy heading into the finale. Rainwater tells John that he used his business background to figure out that it would take about $14 billion to buy the Paradise Valley, and he will start with John's ranch. Thomas tells John his plan involves buying the Dutton Ranch right after the patriarch dies, when the Dutton children can't afford the inheritance tax. Thomas says, "I am the past catching up with you," hinting at Sheridan's Yellowstone prophecy with a modern promise that informs the Yellowstone Season 5 finale. Thomas' threat feels evident, with Yellowstone Season 5, Episode 13 making the Dutton Ranch prophecy more likely. After John's death, Beth, Kelly Riley, and Case struggle to pay the ranch's massive inheritance tax. Beth holds an auction to liquidate the ranch's assets, but she tells Monica it won't dent the inheritance tax they owe, just the debt on the mortgage that pays it. Thus, Rainwater predicted the penultimate episode of Yellowstone. The only thing that's changed is his ability to acquire it, which he tells Beth in Season 5 after various events held up his casino's development. Since the opening season of Yellowstone, Case has tried to walk away from the ranch, and Beth has wanted to sell it, shedding the burden of Yellowstone's Dutton family tree. As Beth plans to portion off parts of the ranch to buy the siblings time, Case devises a plan to give it away. Casey's proposal would keep the Yellowstone whole, which his father and grandfather wanted. While we don't know the details, Case's conversation with Beth suggests he may sell it to the Broken Rock tribe for a small fee. The plan would conclude Paramount Yellowstone storylines. As fans eagerly anticipate the continuation of Yellowstone Season 5, one question looms large. Could this be the moment when Thomas Rainwater's quiet but ever-present threat to John Dutton finally comes to fruition? From the very beginning, the dynamic between these two powerful figures has been as much about shared respect as it is about latent conflict. Rainwater, the calculating and principled leader of the Broken Rock Reservation, has often walked a fine line between being an ally to John Dutton and a potential adversary. Season 5 could be the tipping point where Rainwater's ambitions, combined with external pressures, force him to take a decisive stand against the Dutton patriarch and his sprawling Yellowstone ranch. The foundation of the conflict. Rainwater's vision for the land that Yellowstone occupies has been clear from the outset. He sees it as stolen territory, the ancestral homeland of his people, and he believes it's his duty to reclaim it. While he's long acknowledged the deep connection John Dutton has to the land, that respect hasn't diminished Rainwater's resolve. For Rainwater, the Yellowstone Ranch represents not only a symbol of colonial dispossession, but also a strategic opportunity to restore dignity and economic sovereignty to the Broken Rock community. In earlier seasons, Rainwater's methods of challenging Dutton were relatively restrained. His attempts to buy land surrounding the ranch or block Dutton's business moves were calculated to apply pressure without triggering an outright war. Yet, as John Dutton becomes governor of Montana in Season 5, the stakes shift dramatically. Rainwater now faces an opponent who not only owns the largest contiguous ranch in the United States, but also wields significant political power. This new dynamic could force Rainwater to escalate his strategies. Rainwater's political predicament. Rainwater's position is not as unassailable as it might appear. Over the seasons, his leadership of the Broken Rock Reservation has been challenged by both internal dissent and external forces. Chief among these threats is Angela Blue Thunder, whose ruthless pragmatism and disdain for Rainwater's careful diplomacy have created tension within the tribal council. Angela represents a faction that's tired of half measures and sees Rainwater's approach as too deferential to Dutton and the broader Montana establishment. Season 5 has already hinted that Angela's influence could grow, pushing Rainwater to adopt a more aggressive stance. If Rainwater hopes to maintain his leadership and secure the support of his people, he may have no choice but to confront Dutton head-on. This confrontation could take many forms, from legal battles over land rights to outright sabotage of Dutton's political initiatives. The question is whether Rainwater can strike a balance between appeasing his more militant supporters and staying true to his principles. John Dutton's vulnerabilities. While John Dutton has always been a formidable opponent, Season 5 reveals cracks in his armor. His new role as governor has placed him under intense scrutiny and stretched his resources thin. Managing both the ranch and the state of Montana has left him vulnerable to political attacks, legal challenges, and even betrayal from within his own family. Beth, Jamie, and Case each bring their own complexities to the table, and their conflicting loyalties could weaken John's position just when he needs unity the most. Rainwater is astute enough to recognize these vulnerabilities. If he chooses to strike, he'll likely do so at a moment when John is preoccupied with other battles. For example, Rainwater could align with Jamie, whose simmering resentment toward his adoptive father makes him a potential ally to anyone opposing John. Alternatively, Rainwater might exploit the growing tensions between Montana's ranchers and environmentalists, framing the Duttons as out-of-touch landowners who prioritize their own legacy over the greater good. The power of legal and economic leverage. One of Rainwater's greatest strengths lies in his ability to wield legal and economic tools as weapons. Throughout the series, he has demonstrated a keen understanding of how to manipulate systems of power to his advantage. In Season 5, Rainwater could use his tribal government's resources to challenge the legality of the Duttons' land claims. Historical treaties, archaeological findings, or environmental regulations could all serve as the basis for lawsuits that tie up the Duttons in court for years, draining their finances and weakening their resolve. Additionally, Rainwater's alliance with powerful corporate interests, such as market equities, gives him access to vast resources that could be deployed against the Yellowstone Ranch. While Rainwater has been cautious about fully aligning with these entities, knowing their goals often conflict with his own, desperation or strategic necessity might force him to reconsider.